What's up, everybody? Taylor, Sheepish Goat. That's me. Today we're doing something not really different, kind of in a similar vein, but there's a sort of a twist. I'm talking in circles. Have you seen those videos online where someone takes like their drawing from when they were like 5 and they make it into something new and modern? We're doing that. The only difference is I don't have the original drawing. This video is suddenly far less interesting. You have no point of comparison. So let's start here. I was going through old drawings, and in doing so, in going through those old drawings, I thought of this drawing I made when I was younger, and I had it like at my dad's house. I had it like kind of like taped to my wall in my bedroom, kind of by my desk where I would draw. And what it was this weird amalgamation because growing up, ducks were huge, especially in Disney. You had the Mighty Ducks. Mighty Ducks cartoon show. You had Darkwing Duck, you had DuckTales, you had Donald Duck, you had Daffy Duck. Like, there was a million ducks, and they were all over TV when I was younger. And I like some of those. But I ended up creating my own duck. Very original to make your own duck. I made my own duck called Duck Ninja Cowboy in space. Why it was prefaced in space is because I think I couldn't think of a better way to phrase that, because I don't think he exists outside of space. So he is always in space. It's a little irrelevant. But the drawing itself was very generic looking duck standing on a meteorite. He had a flagpole that had like a flag blowing, and it probably said like his initials, like Duck Ninja Cowboy DNC. I think that's what it said. It's hard for me to remember, because I was like in middle school, verging high school area. And he had no pants per usual duck lore. He had like bandage kind of wraps. I think that was the ninja aspect on his arms, and I think maybe up into his neck. He had a hat on, kind of like a cowboy hat, similar to like a Darkwing Duck, but there was a space helmet cleared like dome underneath it where the hat would like sit on top of. And he might have had like a couple throwing stars. I think he probably had a gun, and I think he probably had a katana. Some of those are guesses, but that's what I remember. And it wasn't super exciting, but I just liked the amalgamation. I loved how weird concepts could fit together in this new character, even though it was probably derivative of Darkwing Duck and Duck Dodgers and, different things like that. But even though all of that, I liked how it would come together and these random thoughts. Instead of me doing these quick draw videos where I combine random ideas, I thought it'd be fun to take that old drawing in specific, not just an old drawing, which is why I think this video is valid, but taking like 4 random things and combining it to make something new. And in the future, I think we'll elaborate, we'll do further videos. But for this one, I wanted to start with redoing that original 4 random thoughts into one unique character. So we are rebuilding this character from the ground up with no original reference, but those are the things you need to keep in mind. He is a duck, he is a ninja, he is a cowboy, and he is in space. And from that, all sorts of fun ensues. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so first things first, what I wanted to focus on was the pose. I knew I wanted a dynamic pose, so I worked on a silhouette first. So that's what I'm doing here. I figured out a silhouette that I thought was dynamic, that would give some foreshortening so he could be a little bit closer at an angle. And from there, I just started going in with duck motif. I thought I wanted to have him smoking because I wanted him to feel kind of like a badassy. I thought I originally gave him this long flowy cape, which eventually goes away. And his hat, I kind of went for the traditional peaked like rice farmer quote unquote hat. That gets shifted. However, what I did decide to do, which wasn't part of the original design, is I merged the hat and the dome. so that the dome is incorporated into the hat instead of the hat just sitting on top. I thought it was much more interesting than the hat just sitting on top. At this point, I thought I had a really good idea, where I was like, well, if his head is in a dome, and I don't know how I handled this the first time. I think I just had a massive fucking dome on this guy. I thought if his head was in a dome, then how would that work? Because his bill would be protruding. So I went to like samurai lore, where they wear like those oni masks that cover their face, and I thought that would be cool. What if he had like an outer mask that went over the bill, that was like kind of metallic and fit into like the space and the ninja vibe at the same time. So I was really happy with that. And I also decided to add a detail where he'd have like a little hole in his mouth where he could insert cigarettes while his mask was still on, which is so, it breaks the laws of everything. But hey, what are you gonna do? And this was all really trying to figure out a balance between all four, but all three of the distinct areas, right? So like duck is obvious, but really the things I had to balance were ninja, cowboy, and space. Those are three very broad topics. So every element I'm trying to get a balance of all of those and make sure it feels like he's not super heavy in one or super heavy in the other. So right here he feels very heavy in like cowboy with that hat for sure. I put a star on his head, but obviously the star is reminiscent of a throwing star. That's how I wanted to tie those together. Katana, right, I'm giving him a belt now. With the buckle, I originally tried to do like a weird clasp, so maybe it felt more spacey. I get away from that later. But I knew I wanted a big gauntlet on his arm, like a big like space suit glove. And you'll see I add more little details, like I add like this little thing on the side of his head, which could be a speaker, it could be to sift air. I'll leave it open to your imagination, I just thought it looked interesting. But I decided to incorporate a few different things on his legs, which is a little atypical for ducks. I decided to do some joint sections where like there'd be like, where the parts of the suit merge together and they have rotation, kind of like a Lazy Susan. That's on real spacesuits. Thank you, Adam Savage, for making me watch a lot of spacesuit stuff, so you can see how joints work on spacesuits when they need to keep their shape, but they need to have pivot points for movement. So that's where I kind of came up with that. I also decided to give him these weird like knee pads, but they actually emit light. Very impractical, but they're there, so he can always see where his feet need to go. I also wanted to redo that star motif on his nose, and I figured that would be an interesting point where light could emit. Again, probably impractical because it would blind you, but I knew underneath his hat it would be quite dark, so I wanted a way to help illuminate that to make his eyes pop a little more. That was a deliberate choice. So like I said, at the beginning of this, I spent quite a bit of time trying to focus on just a pose that I thought would be nice. And that's something that I've lacked in previous, and something I'm actively trying to work on is working on a good pose before I really start in the drawing. I still fall into the trap of giving too many details too quickly before I really get all the body language worked out, but it is an active point that I'm working on in my own art to make it better. He does have a backpack, which we'll add more details into later. I didn't really know where I was going to go fully with it, but I knew the bottom of it would be a glass dome where you could see something inside, and well, you'll see what that is in just a little bit here. This piece, for your reference, does go full. So we get through line work, we go through full shading, then we get through full coloring. So it took four or 5 days. It was like 45 hours or something in total, which is mostly all in like 4 days. So it was quite a lot of continuous work, but I'm very, very happy with how it came out in the end. The coloring, I always feel like I could do better with coloring. I think the shading turned out fine, but the implementation of color and the balancing of light, I always kind of get carried away with. A lot of talking, let's sip. It's actually tea this time, I'm sorry. I know, you probably won't watch me anymore because it's not coffee. When you're doing a lot of talking, tea does help, I'll tell you that much. Something I'm really glad I did, and I wanted to do it, but wasn't sure how it would come out, but really keeping asymmetry between his left and right side, right? So his right arm holding the sword is fully clothed, and then I have a bare winged arm where he just has a glove on, and I really wanted that distinction. I think it makes him look more unique and pop more. This is generally the whole idea of the character right here. I thought he was feeling lacking in a little bit of the ninja vibe, so to hold his katana I gave like a big chunky rope, and it's again trying to incorporate certain items, but trying to make them all feel cohesive is definitely a challenge. But I thought it came out pretty well. I don't think it clashes, but I think it clashes in the right way. It feels stupid in the best way, if that makes sense. Like, you know, it's supposed to be stupid. And I think the elements kind of all balance off of each other, which is really cool. I was happy with all those details. Here we finally get on to what's inside his backpack. They're just little rubber ducks, and I don't know why they're in there. I don't know if they power his backpack or if he collects them, like that's his goal. He just goes around and saves rubber ducks across the universe. It's so stupid, but I thought it would be... I mean, if he's a duck, you gotta go full duck. You can't half-ass the duck. I'm working on some background elements. He's flying through space. He is on a meteorite, not a cliche round dome, round pitted meteorite, but I do incorporate one just for my nostalgia of my original drawing. But I have a flag here. Doing the flag was fine. Doing the lettering on the flag to follow the curve, that was actually pretty hard, but I'm really happy with how the letters came out. Once I do add those at some point, you'll see, but I think they follow the curve quite nicely. I really just wanted to have some unique looking rocks. I didn't want them all to be identical because I wanted variety, I guess. Something interesting going on. He is the focus, but I wanted you to be able to look around and see some other details. Obviously, because it will be colored, the background will be very black. It's space, go figure. So I knew the things that were within the light had to be interesting. I thought this last little guy would be a fun addition. As of now, I'm calling him Cacti the Kid. He's more in the cowboy vein, but since he's in space, we'll say he's cowboy space. He doesn't have the ninja vibe, but I wanted him to be really goofy and dumb looking, and I'm happy with how he came out. And he's just a nice little detail in the corner to give you something else to look at as your eyes kind of move around the image. What I tried to do, because getting the angle was very hard, so I tried to block it out into squares to define the perimeter of where those letters would fall. And then after I did that, I tried to match those lines to the upper and lower curves that I already defined. And that's how I kind of got there. And there's probably a better way, and I didn't do the best job, but I thought they follow enough where they still help accentuate the movement that I put in the body of the flag. let's talk about this. This is something I generally suck at, is going in and adding values first as an individual layer before I layer colors on top. I know that's what most people do, but when I started making art, I never really did that. I just thought of it as you just put the color down in the appropriate shade, and then this is the much better way to do it. So something else I'm actively working on to get better and better is doing my values secondarily, or I guess firstly, and then applying the color to overlay on top of that to meet those natural shades, because it is easier and honestly a better choice to have your values as a separate layer. Then you can just worry about placing like flat colors on top and they just match the black and gray scale that you've already done separately. Because doing it for each individual color can be hard, is the point I was going to make. Adding the values to the character, adding some white, bright highlights, some deep blacks, just trying to get the overall tonal value of the character down. It came together pretty fast, wasn't too hard. The colors, again, is the part that I feel like I suck on the most. I suck at the most, not suck on. That's a little Freudian? No, that's not what I meant. It's just the part that I'm not the best at, so getting better and better. And this piece had so much bright color to it, like objects that were illuminating light. He has that light bulb, that bottom glass dome in the back will emit light. The trail of the meteors will emit light. So there's a lot of bright spots. I think in the end I could have toned down the brightness a little bit, and I think maybe it would have popped more, but it's something I just, I didn't want to spend even more time on it and keep chasing that perfect idea, right? I wanted to let it be. I felt like it was at a point where I was very happy. I made a lot of progress throughout it. I was very happy with my line work. I was very happy with the shading values. The overall composition of the shot I thought was nice. I feel like your eye kind of trails around and leads you to the front quite nicely. So there was a lot of benefits and things I really enjoyed about this piece, but there's definitely still points where I feel like I can improve. But it was nice because this was definitely a piece that I feel like I kind of improved and was able to incorporate some of my recent learnings into this. Even if I can't entirely define what those were, I can feel it as I'm drawing that I'm getting to those points faster. I felt like I figured out this character pretty fast. And again, I had a reference point. I knew I had drawn him once before, but it had been like probably 15 years or something stupid. And I don't even have a reference image. It was just what I recalled in my head. So it was really coming up with a character from nothing, to be frank, just an idea. And I thought he came together nice. I particularly really like how the metallic values come out in this. I thought those came out very nice on the metallic structure across his beak, on the kind of leg bends, and there's a few different metal objects throughout this. Obviously, he's in space. He has to have those. And I really like how those came out, if I'm being honest. And not too afraid to talk about how I feel about my work, which I'm not doing. So I do enjoy that. I guess the main thing I thought of when I was trying to figure out how this would work is some of them I started with, I knew this piece of clothing would be darker than others, but obviously I knew I had definitive light sources. I knew the light bulb on the backpack would illuminate light. Excuse me. I knew the backpack light bulb would emit light. I knew the duck area on the bottom would emit light. I knew above his nose would emit light, although you can't really tell from this current lighting because I think I figured it out a little bit later. And then the meteor trail. Oh, his knees as well. But at this point, I don't think I realized his knees would emit light. I kind of decided on that because I thought they kind of looked like TV screens. But that's kind of how I started. I started with some bases, and then as I moved further along and had more values kind of finalized, I went through and readjusted them based on those light sources. So I knew if they were close to the light bulb, they would be closer to white, and then I would blend them outwards and kind of fade where I needed to. That was my process as I moved through this. So really trying to make sure I had black blacks and white whites, and then a good value mix in between. Something that I'm sure you saw me do in the beginning, and I do it a lot, and I do it finally at the very end of this, and I should have done it again sooner, but always making sure to flip the canvas, especially when I'm doing line work and constructing the body. It's so valuable, looking at your drawing from multiple angles. When I do a piece, I flip it constantly. I'm looking at it to see if it looks the same on both ways, because it often won't if it's digital. I often even look at it at different screens, so I'll put it on a monitor and look at it, I'll put it on my phone and look at it, and I'll try to look at it at different perspectives, because it really helps you get a different eye on something, and it lets you assess it from different vantage points. You know, does this read at a tiny scale? Does this read at a larger scale? Are things getting lost because maybe values are too similar or colors are too similar? That's super important, and I think it's easy to overlook that until the end. So, point being, I do a flip like right towards the very end, because I decided I like him going to the right versus the left. Kind of more on momentum going forward versus going backwards if you go to the left. And I just decided I liked that at the end. But if I wouldn't have waited so long, there's a point where I put some text in here and I didn't feel like redrawing it, so the text is backwards. Hey, what are you gonna do? That's okay. It's live and learn. Again, it's something that I knew was irrelevant. I didn't care enough to fix it at that point, so. But yeah, capturing all the texture and material details in this was a lot of fun. I could have probably went further. I could have probably added like pitting and scratch marks and things to the metal objects, or tearing. Didn't do any of that. But just in regards to like metal surfaces versus cloth surfaces, I thought they really were legible. You could read it pretty easily what was metallic. I really was happy with how that came out. So. I did a lot with recoloring my line art in this, which is something I always have mixed feelings about. I like to have the line art. I don't like to delete it and just do like a painting style necessarily. Although I might challenge myself and try to do that before too long. But I like to have the line art. I like how it looks. It makes it feel more like a cartoon or a comic to me, which I enjoy. And I always play around with coloring the line work, right? So you'll see me do it a lot later, but once like I get to the light bulb, right, I make the outer edge of the bulb white versus black. That way it doesn't catch your eye so much, and it more represents a glass object emitting light, versus that hard black, which will catch your eye and kind of maybe ruin the immersion of that piece. So I played a lot with coloring my lines in this, and that actually added quite a few more hours to the piece. But I think I kind of did it in a way this time that felt like a good balance of black versus color. I didn't make every single line colored. Kind of keeping the bottom line, playing it like a value shift, right? So if your light is hitting from the top, darkness is below, maybe the bottom of an object that kept black, the top I put in a color or light, maybe representing the color that was shining on it, or, you know, something to that effect. But those were all things I was really trying to consider in this. I also kind of wanted to give his face behind the mask kind of a haze. I wanted it to feel like it was actually within a dome, and perhaps because of that, the colors were maybe a little bit more muted, or it was maybe slightly more blurry. I didn't want to make it so it wasn't legible. Like, I wanted you to be able to tell there was a duck in a costume. But again, just trying to add those believable details. I did a similar thing with the ducks in the dome on the backpack on the bottom. I kind of made those softer and stuff as we went further in. So. Played with a few different brushes, normally a round brush, but like I applied in different ways. Like if you look at his arm, you can see there's like what I tried to feint at like a feather kind of texture, right? It looks kind of like feathers. Sure, let's go with that. But for example, like the rope on his belt, I used like a lined brush that gave like a fanned kind of texture to help help try to show that it looked like rope or twine. And I think it was fairly effective in certain areas. On his blade, on the katana blade, I tried to give a metal layer kind of textured shine to it. I'm actually pretty happy with that, how that came out. Yeah, here we started playing with colors, and this was a little tricky at first because I had no idea what color palette to put him in. I wanted the metal to be gold, like I said. I knew I was like, most of this metal, I want it to be like a brassy gold because I thought it would pop and look really cool. Because I like those colors. I like brass and gold a lot, more than like silver. So I knew I wanted that. I wanted to get the deeper tones. I wanted to get kind of the greeny tarnished feeling. And I think that was all pretty effective. But because of that, I originally, I think, went into, I mean, we'll see here. I forgot, honestly, everything I did. But I originally went with like a purple vibe for his like undershirt, which gets re-skewed actually at some point. But again, outside of the goldy brass feeling, I had no idea what I wanted to do for colors on this. Yeah, I went reds and purples, which is what I thought. I eventually look at a color palette, I pull in a palette, and I look at different values to try to figure out what I want to do. Oh yeah, I originally also made him brown. He doesn't stay brown because I was like, all the ducks are white, aside from Daffy. So let's do brown, but it wasn't reading well, and I think it's because the background was so dark that he didn't stand out enough, being brown, even though I have these light sources. I just wanted it to pop more. Point being, I then looked at a bunch of colors. So different colors that look good together. You can find those online pretty easily. So I looked up some different color palettes, found one that I liked, and I started rolling with that at some point. Before I totally abandoned it. And I was feeling like it wasn't reading in the exact way I wanted it to read. So I decided to look at the Mighty Ducks again, because I was like, I really like the gold. And I was like, what did the Mighty Ducks do? Well, the Mighty Ducks did white, green, I think some red, and like teal. Like it's like a teal green and stuff. And I was like, those colors work really nicely. So I eventually reskew him, and you can tell here I'm just like, what the hell can I do to make these colors pop? I haven't shifted yet. He's still very purples and stuff. And some of those look cool. Like the glove pops and is kind of interesting. But I eventually skew him. And once I make his bodysuit like a tealy green, then he starts to come together. But yeah, again, it was finding that balance of how do I, now that I've sort of balanced the motifs, right? The duck, the ninja, the cowboy. How do I balance the colors into the character with all these random elements and make it feel interesting? I went into green here. I was like, oh, green's kind of cool. It felt kind of like a 90s toy, which I did enjoy. I liked the pink and the green and thought it was cool. And then I was like, it's not really, wasn't really coming together. And here's where I get the sea foam, like the greeny teal color. And then I start kind of reworking it. I was like, I want white. I want some white in here. I think it'll make it pop more. And yeah, this is where I start to get on the right track. Probably still takes me a minute, but reds and teals and whites and gold, that kind of becomes our go-to. And again, I laid the palette down so that I could have a good reference point. And if I need to pull a color, because as I'm applying these, I might apply them in a different way, right? So like if it's going over a metal texture, I'll use a specific layer property versus a different layer property, where I might just do like multiply on the clothes to just give them a darker tone. I might do like a color burn or something, or an add or illuminate, or, you know, to give different values and make different colors pop differently on different objects. But yeah, we're starting to get into the correct color tones here. We still keep shifting it and find where those colors need to be. I kind of fell into a pattern of where I realized where I kind of like, I like the greenish teal against like the dark red, and then that would lead you maybe into like the brighter red. And I kind of found like some transitions. I really liked how that deep metallic red looked against like the creamy white. And then it was, again, just keep balancing those and figuring out how they best balance. We finally gone ahead and made him white, which I think immediately reads so much better against the background. Here we finally start to work on the background a little bit. I was originally going to go with this pinky, kind of looks like a pie crust. It's like a pie crust, and then you get below and there's like fruit down there. It eventually skews to be green, and that kind of works with his color palette more. I knew that the background would have its own color. I would have kind of a bleed overlay color over everything to kind of help meld everything, because that big kind of tealy green planet I wanted to be obviously emitting light itself, so that I felt everything would kind of be baked a little bit more evenly. So you'll see every once in a while it'll look more teal across there, and that's me turning that layer off and on as I go. Yeah, one of the last things I did add was that little sticker on his sheath for his blade, and it says "Quack Kills." I was pretty proud of that. It's a really subtle detail, but those are the words that are backwards at the very end when you flip it. So what are you gonna do? But he's got a cigarette and everything. We're working on more light sources. One of the areas that I kept just failing at was this around his cheek into his mouth. Those colors, I just like could not figure out what colors need to go there. I wanted it to be separate from the front of the beak, but I wanted it to feel cohesive, and by the end I think it worked out. Obviously the teeth are fake teeth, in case that wasn't clear. It's kind of just all an overlay into the front of the beak itself. Structurally, how that all works, I don't know. But I thought that these little sections here kind of looked like little air pockets, and I thought that would be how he breathes. So I liked how it looked, and I made my own in-world distinctions. And we're just cleaning up lines, altering colors of lines so that it reads more clearly. Lines that should stand out do stand out, lines that don't hopefully don't. Obviously that whole backpack around his glove, around the side of his head, I tried to faint those out so they looked kind of overblown, like when you get a light really close to something and the details kind of wash out, was kind of the thought and the idea. I'm very happy with this overall. It surpassed my expectations of where this piece would go, but I still obviously feel like I could have done more, because I will forever feel like that. I guess it's never perfect, because you're always going to be comparing it to something or someone, and what are you going to do? Again, you can see how bright it is, and I try to balance it. I think I could have toned down some of the lights by the very, very end, some of the lights on his upper backpack, but I couldn't really be bothered. So, it's what it is. But that is basically it. We just add the logo back in. I think I add some red to it to make it pop a little more. Do my stereotypical add my signature and the date, and then add much more detail like smoke, and gotta get the final shine effects in, and that is the piece. Yeah, that's it. That is Duck Ninja Cowboy in space forever. He's only in space. Don't even ask him to go on the planet. He only rides meteors. So this isn't really about, again, making a character per se. It's about combining those random ass ideas and trying to put them into balance with each other, which is very hard and is very fun. because their objects at their core might be so different that they don't go together, or you can't see how they are combined, but it can be interesting to find that balance. So as we go forward in other videos, I think we might try more of these with unique random objects and ideas. But for now, that was this one. So I hope you liked it. If you did, let me know. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, until next time. See you then.